This Shabbos is going to be Yud Shevat. Yud Shevat is the Yortzeit of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe at 1950. And a year later, immediately after, it was when the Rebbe became Rebbe. So it's a double celebration. It's the Yortzeit and the day the Rebbe became Rebbe. Exactly. Exactly a year later, yeah. The Rebbe refused to become a Rebbe for a whole year. We're not going to go into the whole thing. And then he said a mimer which symbolizes the fact that he's a Rebbe. So this is his first mimer that the Rebbe said. And in this mimer, he actually puts the blueprint of what's the job of this generation. What is our job? This is the way the Rebbe said to the Hasidim and to the whole Jewish nation, this is what our generation is supposed to do. So that we're going to learn. There's some papers over there if you want. So it says like this. Let's start. This is he actually explains a verse from the Song of Songs. And the verse goes like this. Source number 1. It says, Bati legani achoti kala. It says, I came to my garden, my sister, my bride. This is what God says. I came to my garden, my sister, my bride. And we're going to explain, what does it mean? I came to my garden, my sister, my bride. We're not going to skip source number 1. We're going to go straight to where? To source number 2, where it says Midrash Rabbah. Source number 2, on page number 2 in the top, it says like this. Amar Rabbi Menachem said, Bati lagan en ktiv kan. Notice, it doesn't say I came to a garden. Ela legani. It says, I came to my garden. Not to a garden, I came to my garden. Lignuni. To my dear garden. Lemakom shehaya ikari matchila. To a place that was my main point in the beginning. Ve'ikar shchina betachtonim hayta. Over there, this paper, yeah. The main part of the godly present in the beginning, we're going to see when is in the beginning, but the main dwelling place of God in the beginning was where? In the physical world. Gan Eden, heaven, was here. It was a physical place. It wasn't a spiritual place. It was a physical place. We're on page number 2, paragraph number 2. So let's see what happened. If God was in the physical world, what happened? Did God remain in the physical world? So it explains in Midrash Rabbah, Chet Adam Arishon, the sin of the first man, the sin of Adam, Nistalka Shchina Laraki Arishon. God removed himself from the physical world and went into the first heaven. Chata Cain, when Cain killed Hevel, Nistalka Laraki Asheni, it went into the second heaven. Chata Enosh, there was a sin of Enosh, Nistalka Laraki Ashlishi, it went to the third heaven. Chata Dor Mabul, the generation of the flood, Noach, they sinned. Nistalka Laraki Revi'i, the Shechina, godly presence, removed itself to the fourth heaven. Chatat Dor Migdal, then the building of the Tower of Babel. Nistalka Laraki Chamishi, it went to the fifth heaven. Chatu Anshe Sdom, the people of Sdom sinned. Nistalka Laraki Shishi, it went into the sixth heaven. Chatu HaMitzrim, then the Egyptians sinned. Beimei Avraham, not at the time of the Exodus, the times of Avraham. We're going to see what the sin was. Nistalka Laraki Ashvi. So even though God was in the physical world in the beginning, the sin of man removed God from the physical world step by step, up and up and up and up, and up into the seven heavens. Okay? So let's look at them one by one and notice what is going on over here. Let's do it. Adam's sin and source number 3. This is, everybody knows this. ותראה האישה כי טוב העץ למאכל. The woman saw that it was a good tree to eat. וכי תאווה הוא לעיניים. It was desirable to the eyes. ונחמד העץ להשכיל. And whoever eats from it becomes smart. ותיקח מפריו ותאכל. She took from its fruit, she ate. ותיתן גם לאישה ויאכל. And he gave also to her husband, and he also ate. The first sin, this sin caused God to go away from the physical world and to elevate into the first heaven. In other words, God was not, you cannot see him, let's say, feel him in the physical world anymore. Just like today, you cannot feel God. Let's look at Cain's sin. ויאמר קין אל הבל אחיו, and he said Cain to Abel his brother, ויהי בהיותם בשדה, when they were in the field, ויקם קין על הבל, Cain stood upon Hevel, ויהרגהו. His brother, he killed him. ויאמר השם אל קין, הבל אחיך. God said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? ויאמר לא ידעתי, and he says, I do not know. השומר אחי אנוכי, am I my brother's keeper? Again, God removed himself after this sin from the first heaven to the second heaven. Now it's even more difficult to experience godliness in the physical world. If before it was hard, now it's even harder. Let's go to the next one. Source number 5. Who's this Enosh? So Adam and Chava had 3 sons, Cain and Hevel, and then 130 years later, Shet was born. So this is Shet. So לשט גם הוא יולד בן. So the third son of Cain, his name was Shet. He was born a son. ויקרא את שמו אנוש. And his name was what? His name was Enosh. אז הוחל לקרוא בשם השם. And you should know, we are on page 3, all the way on the top. Then they started calling in the name of God. לקרוא בשם השם, calling in the name of God. And Rashi explained, what does it mean? They started calling in the name of God. What happened? What's the sin of Enosh? What happened? So Rashi explained when it says, as huchal, then it happened. In Hebrew, as huchal, you can translate to then it happened. But the word huchal in Hebrew also has the same root word as chol. Mundane, not godliness, mundane, לשון חולין. לקרוא את שמות האדם. So what happened in the time of Enosh? They started calling the name of man ואת שמות העצבים and the names of objects בשמו של הקדוש ברוך הוא, in the name of God. לעשותן עבודה זרה ולקרותן אלוקות. So Enosh, who's Shet's son, in his generation, people started idol worship. Idol worship started at the time of Enosh. Until then, there was no idol worship. At the time of Enosh, people started calling objects and people and men, they started calling them gods. That was when? At the time of Enosh. Then what happened? God came from the second heaven and he moved himself into the third heaven. Let's see it. The flood, everybody knows the flood, source number 6. וירא כי השם כי רעת האדם בארץ, and Hashem saw that there's a lot of bad in the land, וכל יצא מחשבות ליבו רק רע כל היום, and the only thing that man thinks about is only to do bad. In other words, there's no good thoughts by nature, by man. וינחם השם כי עשה את האדם בארץ. God regretted that he made man. ויתעצב ליבו. He was saddened. ויאמר השם, and God said, אמחה את האדם אשר בראתי מעל פני האדמה. I'm going to destroy all the people from the earth. מאדם עד בהמה, עד רמס ועד עוף השמיים, כי ניחמתי כי עשיתים. Because there's nothing good is going to come out of these people. There's no one good act that's going to come out of them. I have to destroy everything. Again, God is removing himself one more heaven, from the third heaven to the fourth heaven. Next one, source number 7. Vayomru, and they said, this is the people of Babylon, people of the Tower of Babel. הבה נבנה לנו עיר ומגדל וראשו בשמיים ונעשה לנו שם ונפוץ על פני כל הארץ. So the generation after the flood were afraid. They saw what happened when they sin, when they're bad people. So they had no choice. They did believe in God. Why did they believe in God? Because they saw, when you don't believe in God, what happens? What happens? The entire world is destroyed. There's only Noah and his 3 sons that has to restart the entire earth. So they say, we're still not going to listen to God just like the previous generation, but we're going to make sure that we're going to survive. How we're going to make sure that we survive? We're going to build the tower, which is very, very, very tall. And then God is going to be able to, even if it brings a flood, we live on the top. He won't be able to destroy us. ומגדל וראשו בשמיים ונעשה לנו שם. It says we're going to become famous, we're going to make ourselves a name, נעשה שם. עבודה זרה שתהיה במגדל. We're going to do idol worship that is going to be in the tower. ויצא בכל מין האנושי שם גובה, מקומה וגודל עירה. Everybody is going to know how great we are. We're going to create the best society upon the face of the earth. באופן שתחשב אלוקי האלוקים אצל כל בני האדם. Everybody is going to be jealous at us. They're going to see what we accomplished. ואליה ידרשו כולם. והכוונה בזה הייתה שהמולך על אותה עיר ימלוך על כל המין האנושי בהיות שם דרישת כולם. It says we're going to make New York. We're going to make a big, big building over there. We're going to put the UN over there. And then everybody will need the dollar. Everybody will come and will subjugate everybody. This is pretty much, that's the idea. Look at what the world is trying to do for the last, since World War I. Everybody wants to be the, number one of the world. America is trying to be number one. Europe is trying to be number one. Russia is trying to be number one. China is trying to be number one. Even Saddam Hussein thought he was going to try to be number one. Iran are thinking they're going to be number one. This is, each one are trying to build the tower that everybody else needs. Yep. And that was what happened then. God removed himself to another heaven. Source number 8. ויאמר השם, זעקת סדום ועמורה כי רבה וחטאתם כי כבדה מאוד. Then came the city of Sodom. ארדנה ואראך צעקתה, בא לה עשה כלה ואם לא ידע. It says, what's the problem with the city of Sodom? The problem with the city of Sodom was that you were not, up to now in the time of Noah, people were cruel. People were bad to each other. People were not nice to each other. But that was not the law. The law wasn't that you have to be cruel. It wasn't the law. In Sodom, it was a different level already. You know what the level was in Sodom? The level in Sodom was that you have to be cruel. You're not allowed to be nice. See, until now, if you want, people were cruel naturally, but if you wanted to be nice, they will let you. Go ahead, be nice. Now, it's against the law to be nice. What does it mean against the law to be nice? So let's read, Rashi explains. ורבותינו דרשו, our sages explain, God heard haketsa'akata. He heard the shouting. Who did he hear the shouting of? צעקת ריבה אחת שהרגו מיתה משונה. There was a young maiden in Sodom who saw a poor person outside of Sodom. And there was a rule in Sodom never to feed the poor and hungry. You're not allowed to. Let them die. They're a menace to society. We just want the rich one. But she had a heart and she fed that man every day until somebody figured out that she fed him. And what did they do to her? They took her, they smeared honey all over her body, and they let the bees and insects eat her up. And she screamed to God, says, this is what I do for you, God. This is the reward. Something like this. על שנתנה מזון לעני, כמפורש בחלק. So over here, even more deeper, God is going to go now and removing himself now that kindness is a sin by people, that kindness is against the law. God came down into another level. And the last level, the seventh heaven, source number 1, Vayehi kevo Avram Mitzrayma, and when Avram came to Egypt, Vayiru HaMitzrim et ha'isha ki yafa hi. The Egyptians saw Sarah, that she was a beautiful woman. Vayiru ota sarei Paro, the ministers of Paro saw Sarah. Vayalelu ota el Paro, they praised her to Paro, v'tukach ha'isha beit Paro. And the woman was taken to the house of Paro. In other words, the Egyptians, if they wanted a woman, they wouldn't just take her, because they were so-called righteous people. She's married. We're not allowed to take her. So what would they do? They will kill their husband and then they'll take her. She's not married anymore. So in other words, they used God, they used Torah laws, so-called positive laws. We are very moral people. We do not marry somebody else's wife. But you know what we do? Out of morality, we kill him first and then we marry her. Yeah? So they're using God, they're using moral laws for their evil. So God says, this is the outmost. When you use the Torah to go against me, that's the most. And God removed himself all the way to where? To the seventh heaven. So God now is no longer on earth. How many times is he removed from earth? He's removed from earth 7 times. 7 sins is removed from earth. Page number 5. Source number 10. And this is again from the Song of Songs, Midrash Rabbah. כנגדן עמדו 7 צדיקים והורידו לארץ. So corresponding to that, after that, there were 7 righteous people who brought God back onto land, back into the land, back onto earth. זכה אברהם והורידה מ7 ל6. Abraham married it to bring it from 7 to 6. Yitzchak הורידה מ6 ל5. Yitzchak from 6 to 5. Yaakov from 5 to 4. Levi from 4 to 3. Kehat, Levi's son, from 3 to 2. Amram was Kehat's son, who was Moshe's father, brought it down from 2nd heaven to the 1st heaven. And then came who? Then came Moshe, and Moshe brought it back down to where? To earth. When did Moshe brought it back down to earth? That's Matan Torah. When God descended one more time upon the earth. Okay. So the Rebbe says, Bati leganiach oti kala. This is when God said, I came to my garden, my beloved, my bride. This is what I came to my garden. The garden that I used to dwell in the beginning, before all the sins. And before Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov brought it all back. ונמצא כתוב במדרש רבה, and we find it written in מדרש רבה, לגן אין כתיב כאן אלא לגני לגנוני. It doesn't say to the garden, it says to my garden. What do you mean my garden? למקום שהיה עיקרי בתחילה. To the place I was there in the beginning. Before Adam sins. Because in the beginning, עיקר שכינה בתחתונים הייתה, עד כאן לשונות. The essence of the Shekhinah, the essence of godliness, was specifically in this world, in the physical world. That's where God actually dwelt. Page number 6. וממשיך במאמר, and this is in the discourse of the Friedrich of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. ואחר כך עמדו 7 צדיקים והוריד את השכינה למטה, and then there were the 7 tzaddikim, like we said before, that brought down God into one more heaven until it came down here. שעיקר עניין ההמשכה. So who actually, you're going to ask the question now. Again, the Rebbe is talking about our generation, and he's going to ask the question about our generation. And he's going to say, see, from the beginning, from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and all the generations, there were many generations. By the way, the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, happened to be also the 7th one. In the Chabad Rebbeim, the Alter Rebbe is the 1st one, and the Rebbe is the 7th one. And the theme about the seventh one is the major talk of this discourse. What's so special about the seventh generation? That's what the Rebbe is going to ask. Why is seventh? Why the seventh generation is so special? What's the specialty of them? So he says the direct effect of the seventh generation, which means of Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe was the one to bring it down from the spiritual realm into the physicality. See, to bring it down from one heaven to another heaven to another heaven, that's easy. But to bring it down into the physical world, that's something else. And who did this? Only Moshe was able to do this. So it happens to be, maybe for this, we have to understand that Moshe is the most special. So let's see. שכשם שהיא בעניין הסילוק מלמטה למעלה, הרי העיקר הוא בחטא עץ הדעת. If you ask which is the worst sin, the sin that did the most damage. So obviously the sin that did the most damage was the sin of Adam and Chava. Because that sin removed godliness from the physical world. שנסתלק מארץ. So if that was the most severe sin, the most hard trick, let's say, to bring godliness back down to earth is going to be taken down by Moshe. To take God from spirituality, from heaven, and to put God into physicality. כך הוא בעניין המשכה מלמעלה למטה, עיקר עניין המשכה הוא למטה בארץ דווקא. The main part is to put godliness down into this world. שלבד זאת שהמשכה למטה בעיקר נוגע לנו. First of all, this is our generation. We don't know what things that's happening in heaven, but we know about this physical world. זהו גם עיקר עניין המשכה, וזה נעשה דווקא דווקא. So this was done through Moshe specifically. So maybe we can assume from here that Moshe, compared to everybody else, is infinitely higher. Because he's the one who did it. והטעם לזה מבאר במאמר המוסגר. So immediately the Midrash tells you, don't jump to conclusion, you don't know that. It tells you the reason why Moshe merited to bring it down. And it's a special reason. You probably heard about this reason before. It says, כי כל השביעין חביבים. That's why. You should know that all the seventh one are cherished. There's such a phenomenon. Seventh one are cherished. There's nothing really special about the seventh one. The fact that they're seven, that's why they're cherished. Let's understand. In source 11, page number 7, כל השביעין חביבים לעולם. It says all the seventh generations are cherished, are beloved. So let's see. בדורות שביעי חביב. When it comes to generations, we know that the seventh is cherished. How do we know this? Let's see. Adam, when you have the generation, we have Adam, the first generation. Then we have Shet, his son, Enosh, his son, Canaan, Me'alalel, Yered, Chanoch, Uktiv. Chanoch is the seventh. And all of it about Chanoch, what does it says? Vayitale Chanoch et Elokim. He was cherished. God took him to himself. Says, I want this guy. He's a nice guy. I want him. Why? I don't know. He's special. He's cherished. Ba'avot, when it comes to the forefathers, Shvi'i Chaviv. Also we see the seventh is the most cherished. How do we see this? Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Levi, Kehat, Amram. Who's the seventh? Moshe. After Amram is Moshe. Yeah, exactly, 7 generations. Moshe in the Avot, in the leaders of the Jewish nations, he's the 7th leader. Okay. Babanim, when it comes to son, also the 7th is most cherished. Where do we see it? Shenemar, because it says King David was what child? He was the 7th child. King David was the 7th child. Bashanim, when it comes to the years, Shvi'i Chaviv, the 7th is cherished by God. How do we know this? Shenemar, ve'ashvi'i tishmatena u'natashta. The 7th year, hell, you're not allowed to work the land. Why? Because it's dear to God. Bashmita, the cycle of 7 years, we have a Yovel. After 7 years, after the 50th year, right? 7 times 7 is 49. You have 2 years of Shemitah. You have Shemitah and Yovel. Again, 7 of 7, again, it's dear to God. Bayamim, when it comes to days, the 7th is Special. It's Shabbat when it comes to days. B'chodashim, in the month. Remember, the Torah starts with Nisan. So which is the 7th month if the Torah starts Nisan? Tishrei. Where are all the holidays? In Tishrei, in the month of Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. Yeah, all the holidays in 1/7. So we see 7 is special. So that's, okay. So let's continue. Page number 8. והנה מלשון חז"ל וכל השביעין חביבין. But look what it says. It says all the 7th are cherished. It doesn't say לא כל החביבין שבעים. It doesn't say not all the cherished are 7th. What's the difference? Let's see. מוכח מזה שעיקר המעלה הוא זהו שהוא שביעי. From here we prove that you know why. What's the advantage of the 7th one? Why is it the most dear? You know, why is the 7th the most dear, the most cherished? Because he's got 6 in front of him. And he's got 5 in front of that. In other words, the 7th is more dear, not because he has a special advantage over the other ones. Because he's standing on the shoulders of what? Of all the ones who are before him. He's got no advantage. He in himself is not bringing anything to the table. He's not special in anything. You know what's his specialty? That he's the 7th one. He's standing on the shoulders and all the ones in front of him. That's what his specialty is. In other words, don't think he's greater. This is the Rebbe. He's talking about our generations. It says, our generation is the generation that's going to bring Mashiach. Mashiach is about to come in this generation. And we might think you know why Mashiach is going to come, because we're special. So immediately it tells you, no, you've got no specialty about all the previous generation. You've got no advantage. You know what's your specialty? That you're the 7th one. You're standing on everybody else's shoulders. היינו שחיבתו אינו מצד עניין התלוי בבחירת רצונו ועבודתו. It's not had something to do with you. כי אם בזה שהוא שביעי, שזה מצד תולדה, you just were born 7th. And you have to know that all the 7th is dear. And this is why Moshe, God chose to bring the Torah. Not because he was more special than Abraham, more special than Yitzchak, more special than Yaakov. Because they did all the work, he just needs to bring it down to do the last thing. והנה בערך, כבר כמו חדמו, the previous Lubavitcher said, שגם בעניין שהשביעים חברים ניכר מעלת הראשון. It says over there you see the advantage of the first. שהרי כל עניין שביעי הוא שהוא שביעי לראשון. Because if you're 7th, it means there was 6 in front of you. That's what 7 means. 7 means that somebody started the show. And then there was a 2nd, a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th, a 6th, and then you were the 7th. In other words, the main job was done by whom? By everybody in front of you. In other words, it's not our generation. Our generation is not so special. It doesn't have the specialty. It happened to be that we're standing on the shoulders of all those previous generations throughout the Jewish history. And then the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe explains, ובאר אז מעלתו של הראשון, שזהו אברהם אבינו. It says, the real job wasn't done by Moshe. The real job was done by whom? Was done by Abraham. Abraham did the real job. מפני עבודתו ושהייתה עבודתו מסירות נפש. It says, what was the idea of Abraham? Abraham had the quality of מסירות נפש, of self-sacrifice, complete self-sacrifice, which no one today has. Actually, we all have, but you cannot see it in most people. ואינו מסתפק בזה, עדיין בפייג' 9, הוא מוסיף עוד שאופן המסירת נפש שלו היה שלא חיפש מסירות נפש. It says, by Avraham Avinu and by us, there's a difference. See, if you ask Avraham Avinu, Avraham, do you want to give your life away for God? What would Avraham tell you? No. Avraham would say no. No, not interested. If I have to, I will do it. But do you want to? No. I don't want to. Who, for example, did want to give his life away for God? Someone famous that we all know. Yom Kippur. We know about it from Yom Kippur. Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, his entire life, said, Ad matai yagiu ma'asai le'ma'asei avotai. It says, I want to be on that level of Abraham to what? To give my life away to God. Abraham never wanted to. He did it just by the way. He never saw in it something special. His mesirut nefesh, his self-sacrifice, just you do what you need to do. If you need to do that, you do that. If you need to do that, you do that. Whatever it is. Let's see. שזהו ההפרש בין מסירת הנפש של אברהם אבינו ומסירות הנפש של רבי עקיבא. This is the difference between אברהם אבינו and רבי עקיבא. שמסירות הנפש של רבי עקיבא הייתה שהוא חיפש מסירות נפש. רבי עקיבא wanted to get to the level of Abraham. And he says, מתי יבוא לידי ואקמיינו? He says, I want to become like Abraham. מה שאין כן באברהם, מן מסירות נפש שלו הייתה בדרך אגב, but Abraham never looked for it. If it was necessary, he did it. But he never saw in it something special. So let's look at the way Abraham changed the world. What did Abraham do? Source number 12 on page number 9. פעם אחת יצא תרח למקום מסוים. There was one day that תרח went to another place. והושיב את אברהם כמוכר במקומו. תרח had an idol. Idols are us shop. You know, like a Toys R Us? תרח had idols are us. And he put Abraham, his son, sell the merchandise for me. כאשר בא בן אדם לבקש לקנות פסל, when somebody came to buy a statue in idol worship, היה שואל אברהם בן כמה אתה? Abraham used to ask him, how old are you? Yeah, how old are you? הוא היה עונה לו, בין 50 או 60, he says, I'm 50 years old or 60 years old. The person will tell him. היה אברהם אומר לו, so Abraham used to tell him, אבוי, it says, wow, what are you doing? אבוי לו, it says, how miserable לאותו אדם שהוא בן 60. It says, you are a 60-year-old man, ומבקש לזכות לפסל בן יומו, and you want to bow down to this idol, which I made yesterday? How does that make sense? This idol didn't exist 2 days ago. You're 60 years old, and you want to bow down to this thing that just was made yesterday? What, are you crazy? What's wrong with you? והיה אדם מתבייש ויוצא מן החנות. That person became ashamed. He saw how stupid he is, how foolish he's acting, and he left the store. פעם אישה אחת באה אשר ידה קרת סולת ואמרה לאברהם, one day a woman came with a plate full of food, and she said to Abraham, קח לך והקרב לפניהם. It says, take it and give it to the people, give it to the gods. קם אברהם, נטל פטיש בידו ושבר את כל הפסלים ושם את המקל ביד של הפסל הגדול ביניהם. This story you probably all know. Abraham broke all the idols and he took with a hammer, and then he took the hammer and he put it in the hand of one of the big idols. Yeah? כאשר בא אביו אמר לו, when his father came home to the store, he says to him, מי עשה להם כך? It says, what happened over here? What was the riot over here? What's going on over here? All the idols are broken. ענה אברהם, לא אסתיל ממך. He says, I'll tell you what happened. באה אישה אחת ובידה קרת סולת. One woman came, she had a plate of food, ואמרה לי, and she told me, קח לך והקרב לפניהם. She told me, put it in front of them. הנחתי אותם לפניהם, ואחד אמר, אני אוכל קודם. And I put it in front of them, and one of them says, no, I eat first. ואמר אחר, אני אוכל קודם. And another one says, no, I eat first. So start arguing with each other. כמה גדול ביניהם, and you see this big one with the hammer in his hand? He got up, ושבר אותם, and he broke all of them. Again, this is Abraham. Okay? Page number 10. אמר לו תרח, so תרח, this is the owner of Idol Zaras, tells him, מדוע אתה מהתל בי? האם הפסלים יודעים? Says, why do you think? I'm a fool? You think that I think that these idols actually can move, are sentient? They are alive? אמר לו אברהם, so Abraham tells תרח, ולא ישמעו אוזניך מה שפיך מדבר. It says, I wish your ears will hear what you are talking with your mouth. You yourself don't believe in it. You yourself don't believe in your idols. That's what Abraham tells Terach. Terach wasn't happy. Over here, he has a son, and his son becomes a revolutionary. How does Terach make his living? Terach is making a living through selling idols. Terach becoming famous through selling idols. And his son is changing the world. Not only that, now Terach is also afraid. You know, when you have one son that goes off the way, the entire world is doing one thing, and this son is doing something else. It's dangerous to the family. The government is going to get involved. So before it's becoming very dangerous to the family, and then the king kills him, he says, you know what, I'm going to teach my son a lesson. So let's see what happens. נטלו ומסרו את אברהם לנמרוד. He took Abraham, and he took him in front of Nimrod. He says, that he says to the customers. That he says to me. Let's say him saying to the king. And the king, remember, he claimed that he's God. It's not just a regular king. Right? So he put him in front of Nimrod. He says, that will educate him. Let's see how he comes back from the king. Amar lo Nimrod, avod la'esh. So Nimrod told him, there's an idol worship at the time called fire. It says, worship the fire. Amar lo Avraham told him, it's foolish to worship the fire. Why is it foolish to worship the fire? Ve'evod lemayim shemechabim et ha'esh. Because it says, look, I take water, I put on the fire, so water is stronger than fire. So if you want me to serve anybody, I should serve whom? The water, not the fire. Right? That's what Avraham tells Nimrod. Amar lo Nimrod was happy. He says, you know, you're right. Serve the water. Bow down to the water. Amar lo im ken evod la'anan. He says, no, what are you talking about? There's someone who's stronger than the water. He says, what's strong? He says, look, there's clouds. They take the water up from the seas and they take it up to heaven. So if anything, I should worship what? The cloud. שנושא את המים. אמר לו עבוד לענן. So Nimrod told him, okay, so serve the cloud. אמר לו אם כן, עבוד לרוח. So he says, what are you thinking about? The wind is stronger than the clouds because it moves the clouds. שמפזר את עננים. אמר לו עבוד לרוח. So Nimrod told him, so serve the wind. אמר לו ונעבוד לבין אדם שסובל הרוחות. It says, what are you talking about? Look, all the wind in the world, it was very stormy last night, and people are standing outside and they're not getting blown over. So you've got people who are even stronger than the wind. So let's serve people, Avraham tells him. Amar lo milim ata machbir. It says, you're just saying words. It says, you don't believe in what you're saying. You're just a philosopher. You know, you're like one of those guys who like to argue. That's what you do. You just like to argue. That's what he tells him. Ani eini mishtachave el alesh. So Nimrod tells him, the only thing I bow down to is what? Fire. Ani mashlichecha betocha. I'm going to throw you into the fire. ויבוא אלוקה שאתה משתחוו לו ויצילך ממנו. And let God come and save you from the fire. Let's see what happens. ירד אברהם לכבשן. And then what did Avraham happen? Avraham went down into the furnace and we all know the story. That nothing happened to it. God saved him from the furnace. In other words, did Avraham look to die? No, it came by. It was necessary. It was something that needed to be done. He didn't look for it. And let's look at Rabbi Akiva now. כאשר נידון רבי עקיבא לפני טורנספרופוס הרשע. So Rabbi Akiva, the way Rabbi Akiva was killed, they took 2 beds of nails. You know, like the yogi's lion? Yeah? And they took him between these 2 beds, and they started going up and down with the beds to tear him completely apart. And this was just before morning. Yeah? So when as they're doing this to him, הגיע זמן קריאת שמע. The time to say the Shema came. Rabbi Akiva קרא קריאת שמע וצחק. It says Rabbi Akiva said the Shema and he was delighted. You could see the happiness on his face as he's saying Shema and they are killing him. You can see the happiness on his face. He's laughing out of joy. Amar lo Tonsperopos, so the person who killed him, the governor, told him, Saba, Saba, he said, old man, O mechashef ata, either you're a sorcerer, you're a witch, or boet beyesurim ata, or you're one of those crazy guys that loves pain, a masochist. Either one or the other. Choose. Which one are you? Yeah? Amar lo Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva says to him, Tipach, page 11 at the top. Tipach rocho shel oto ish. It says, let this man die away. In other words, he's cursing him. Lo mechashef ani velo boet beyesurim ani. It says, I'm not a sorcerer, I'm not a masochist. Ela kol yamai karati. It says, every day of my life, you know what I wanted to do every day of my life? I read the Shema. And what does it say in the Shema? It says, ve'ahavta Hashem Elokecha bechol levavcha u'bechol nafshecha u'bechol modecha. Love your Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your might. Ahavti oto bechol olavi. I loved God with all my heart. Ahavti oto bechol omoni. I loved God with all my wealth. Velo izdamen love oto bechol nafshi. But I never merited to give my life away for God. All my life I wanted. Now I have a chance. ועכשיו שבא לידי לעבור בכל נפשי, now the opportunity come to my hand, והגיע הזמן קריאת שמע, and the time to say שמע came, ובליבי אין שמץ ספק ופקפוק בעניין בכלו ישמח. You want me not to be in joy? Obviously I'm in joy. I'm doing the greatest thing. I'm giving my life away for God. He wanted to. Did Abraham wanted to? Never. So let's see. אברהם ידע שעיקר העבודה הוא כמו שכתוב, ויקרא שם בשם השם כל עולם. Abraham knew the main job of the job is what? To call in the name of God. And it says, אל תקרא ויקרא אלא ויקריא. Don't read. And he called in the name of God to himself. He called it to others. What does it mean he called this to others? שגם הזולת יצעק, ואם נצטרך לזה בדרך גם מסירות נפש, הנה גם זה ישנו. It says not only you should know there's a God, everybody should know there's a God. And if you need for that to give your life, you give your life. But it's not something you look for. Something that happens. Where do we see this? Let's look at source number 14. It says, Vayita Eshel b'Be'er Sheva, vayikra sham b'shem Hashem kel olam. And he planted an orchard or an inn in Be'er Sheva. And he called over there, he made famous the name of God. אמר ריש לקיש, אל תקרא ויקרא אלה ויקריא, מלמד שקרי אברהם ולשמו של הקדוש ברוך הוא בפי כל בוא ושער. That Abraham used to make sure that everybody knows about godliness. How? We know the famous story. לאחר שאכלו ושתו, עמדו לברכו, אמר להם וכי משלי אכלתם, משל אלוקי עולם אכלתם, הודו ושבחו ברוכים שלנו. In the middle of the desert, anybody has to come in. After the meal, they said, Abraham, thank you very much. He says, don't thank me, thank who? Thank the one who created the world. This is how Abraham made sure everybody in the world knows about godliness. וכל כך גדלה מעלת עבודתו ומסירות נפש שלו, עד אשר גם משה, מה שזכה ניתנה תורה על ידו. And look what happened. That even at the time of Moshe, that Moshe is the one that merited to bring the Torah, not like Abraham, from the 7th to the 6th, from spirituality to physicality, הוא מטעם כי השביעים חביבים שהוא שביל הראשון. The only reason Moshe was able to do whatever Moshe was doing is why? Because he was riding on the shoulders of Abraham. And this is what God tells to Moshe. והקדוש ברוך הוא אמר לו למשה, God says to Moshe, במקום גדולים אברהם אל תעמוד. It says, in the place of the great ones, you will never stand. This is what God tells Moshe. He says, don't think there's any specialty in you. The only specialty, the only reason when you're special is why? Because you happen to be 7th. There's no quality that you have. You're not special. The only special is because you're 7th to Abraham. You're standing in Abraham's soldiers. Don't ever think that what you are is something bigger than they are. Amar, source number 16, אמר רבי יהושע בן קורחה בשני מקומות עם משה עצמו לאברהם. In 2 places Moshe thought that he is just like Abraham. אמר לו הקדוש ברוך הוא, until God put him in his place. אל תתהדר לפני מלך ובמקום גדולים אל תעמוד. He says, do not boast before the king. Compared to you, he says, Abraham is a king. You're a servant. Yeah? And do not stand in place of the great ones. Don't even dare to stand in a place that Abraham stood. There's nothing special about you. Don't compare yourself to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, all this generation that came before you. So also us. When Mashiach is about to happen, about to come, we might think, oh, we are special. So the Rebbe says, don't you dare think there's anything special about you. All you are is standing on the generations of other giants. Even though the seventh generation is dear, is love, it's got nothing to do with us. It's not because we choose to be great, and it's not because we are doing a great service of God that wasn't done in other generation. It just happened to be that we were born seventh. What choice did we have? In other words, ask Shabbat. Why is Shabbat holy? Because it happened to be there's other 6 days in front of it. What did Shabbat do? Something special? In other words, Shabbat is just like any other day. There's nothing. Every day has a quality. Sunday has a quality, Monday has a quality, Tuesday. Does Shabbat have a quality? No, it doesn't have a quality. It just, the quality is that you don't do any work. It's not the quality. But you know why it's special? Because there's 6 days in front of it. That's it. That's what makes it special. So is our generation. You know why our generation is special? Because there's a whole Jewish history behind us. מכל מקום, אין בזה הגבלה שנאמר שנפלאתי ואינו שייך אל יחידי סגולה. Okay. Nevertheless, each and every one of us has that specialty. Okay. Where do we see that this specialty comes to every person, even though they're not special? So for that, the Rebbe in the Maimer brings a source. So let's look at the source. Source number 17. You probably heard about Devorah the prophetess. Famous prophetess, her name was Devorah. So it says, Udvorah isha neviah, Dvorah, a prophetess woman, Eshet Lapidot. She was the wife of Lapidot. That was his name. He shofta et Israel ba'at ההיא. She was the judge of the Jewish people at that time. וכי מה טיבה של דבורה שהיא הייתה שופטת ישראל בעת ההיא? So he says, the question is, what happened? What's so special about Dvorah? That she became the judge of the entire Jewish people? There was Sanhedrin at the time. It was the high court. No one went to the high court. Imagine there's a court in Israel, a court in America. Imagine, this is actually what happened. Imagine the court in America, and every time something happens, no one wants to go to court. They all come to her. In other words, Biden and Trump are fighting, whatever the fight is. Both of them don't even want to go to the high court. They say, forget the high court, let's go to her. We trust her more than the high court. That's what happened. No one in Israel went to high court anymore. It says, what's so special? How did she become so special? ומתנבאה להם, והלא פנחס בן אלעזר היה בימים ההם. At that time, there was other great prophets. One of them was Pinchas, the son of Elazar. At the same time. So it says, מעיד אני עלי את השמיים ואת הארץ, בין ישראל ובין עובדי כוכבים, בין איש בין אישה, בין אבן בשפחה. So it says, הכל לפי המעשה שהוא עושה, כך חוק קשור עליו. It says, everything happened, she became special. Why? Because of her actions. What is it? What's so special about the action? Let's see. כך אמרו. It says, this is the actions that she took. Let's see, what actions did she do? What's so special? בעלה של דבורה עם הארץ היה. Her husband was an ignoramus. He didn't need to read. He didn't know how to read. He didn't know how to write. Never learned anything. A real ignoramus. That was her husband. אמרה לו אשתו, so his wife told him, בוא ואעשה לך פתילות, והולך אותם לבית המקדש שבשילה. It says, I'm going to make for you wicks, and you take the wicks to the temple. The temple at that time was in Shiloh. The temple stood in Shiloh for 369 years, before Yerushalayim. So it says, מה יהיה חלקך באנשים כשרים שבהם תזכרו לעולם הבא? It says, this way, you're going to contribute something to the Jewish people, to the holiness, to something holy. You're going to have some contribution. Otherwise, you cannot read, you cannot write, you cannot do nothing. Yeah, you cannot give anyway. There's nothing for you to give. והוא היה עושה פתילות אבות, and he used to make big wicks, כדי שיהיה אורן מרובה. So there's going to be a lot of fire in them. לפיכך נקרא שמו לפידות. That's why they nicknamed him Lapid. Lapid in Hebrew means torches. They used to call him torches because he used to make the wicks. That was his name, Lapidot, meaning torches. That became his name. והקדוש בוחן ליבון וכליות הוא, and God measures the heart of a person, ואמר הקדוש ברוך הוא לדבורה, and he says to דבורה, look, I saw what's in your heart. What was in your heart? אתם כיוונתם לשם שמיים ועשיתם פתילות אבות, שיורה מרובה. You wanted to bring a lot of light into this world. גם אני ארבה אתכם בישראל וביהודה ו12 שתעשם. So I'm going to make you light into the Jewish nation. You wanted to bring godly light into the temple, and I would make you the light to the nations, to your nation. Same for same. Measure against measure. Page 14. ומי גרם ללפידות שיכולו בני אדם כשרים וזכים לעולם הבא? And who caused it by לפידות? Why did לפידות merit such a thing? הווה אומר דבורה אשתו. This was דבורה his wife. כך אמרה דבורה אשת ברק, ועל כיוצא בה הוא אומר חכמות נשים בנתה. This is not the first time that a woman saved the Jewish nation. Just because her nullification to God, that's what saved the Jewish nation. Nevertheless, even though we are in the 7th generation, the generation that is going to bring Mashiach, we need to remember. In page 14, we are on page 14, yeah? We are on page 14, okay. אלא שמכל מקום צריך האדם לרמות את עצמו את חידה. So in a place of גדולים אל תעמוד, says in the place of the great one, do not stand, we should know our level, וכי מעלת השביעי הוא שהוא שביעי לראשון. We should know that we are only 7th, not because we're special, because we have all the history behind us. We're going to skip the next 2 paragraphs. והנה זה תובעים מכל אחד ואחד מאיתנו דור השביעי, שכל השביעים חביבים. And this is what God demands from each and every one of us in this generation. שאם היות שזה שאנחנו בדור השביעי, even though we are in the 7th generation that Mashiach is going to come, הוא לא על פי בחירתנו, it's not because we chose it, ולא על ידי בחירתנו, it's not because we are special, we can do the work that somebody in that generation cannot do. That's not true. ובכאן המעניינים אפשר שלא כפי רצוננו, and in some things it's not even our choice. Mashiach is going to come whether we like it or whether we don't. מכל מקום, nevertheless, you should know that since we are the 7th generation, we are a special generation. שנמצאים אנחנו בעקבת דמשיחא, בסיום עקבת העבודה לגמור המשכת השכינה, ולא השכינה כי מקר השכינה תחיל דווקא. That it's our job, specifically now, to bring godliness down here into earth. We're going to stop over here, even though there's more, but we won't have the time to cover the rest. So again, the purpose of this generation is to bring down godliness into this world. And if you're going to think, Avraham, in the previous generation it didn't happen, King David didn't do it, you're going to think Rabbi Akiva's generation didn't do it. Nevertheless, we can say that our generation is going to merit to do it. And it's not because we are special. It's not because we have powers that the other generations didn't have. It's only because they come before us. And it happened to be that the 7th generation happened to be a special generation. And it is our job as the 7th generation to make sure that every Jew, wherever he is around the world, is going to know and going to bring godliness to him in such a manner that he's going to appreciate it. Because if you bring it in a manner that he doesn't appreciate it, that's not called bringing it down. Bringing it down means to explain Judaism in such a way that every Jew will appreciate it, will think it's sweet, will hug it. Otherwise, you're not actually bringing it down. Otherwise, you're not actually doing what the seventh generation is supposed to do. The seventh generation is a generation that's supposed to take godliness, the Torah, and bring it down to each and every Jew. And this is what the Rebbe, as we can see, has done when he put shluchim all over the world to make sure that in every corner of the earth there's going to be someone who can bring Judaism down to the masses, to the people. And not just bringing it down with shouting brimstone and lightning and this, bringing it down in a manner that is going to be sweet for everyone.